Well, a very good afternoon, morning, evening, wherever you are. I'm Nadia. I'm a communication skills trainer. I'm a keynote speaker and author. And one of the fabulous things I get to do is interview remarkable people. And today I bring you Dr. Jerome Lubbe. And why I'm so excited about Dr. Jerome is that he is a functional neurologist. And he has been working with people to bridge the gap between brain science and behavior. And Dr. Jerome, you will do a much better job of introducing yourself than I have, but I cannot tell you, I've been following you, I've been watching your YouTube videos, so it's really a pleasure to have you here in person on this lovely Thursday.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's a gift. It was so fun to have you reach out and the opportunity to have this conversation with you. And for anybody who's not familiar with my work, I'm often referred to as the patient doctor or as a personal trainer for the brain. And the reason being the patient doctor, it's a double entendre. I'm both a very patient person, but I've been a professional patient for over 25 years. My undergrad is in digital animation and special effects production and music full time. I never really meant to go into healthcare. I went to over 25 specialists over a decade, spent $100,000 to find a diagnosis, and realized there's not a lot of folks that know how to do really restorative care for complex cases. So I ended up becoming the doctor that I couldn't find, which was kind of wild for an immigrant kid from overseas. I was born in South Africa and immigrated on asylum status to the States in the early 90s from Congo when it was still called Zaire. So in a lot of ways, I don't look like the person most people think of when they see what's on paper about me. But the long story short is I've just worked to create spaces to help people find answers I could not find in the spaces that I was struggling in.
So if you were born in Benoni, can you speak any Afrikaans?
I can't. You know, the crazy thing is, my dad spoke 13 languages. He spoke Afrikaans, Ndebele, Swahili, Xhosa. And we always agreed that once we got our green cards, we would pick the language back up again because we came over speaking French and Afrikaans. But unfortunately, my dad passed away less than a year after we got our green cards when I was 14. And I think it is in there somewhere. But unfortunately, I don't sound Afrikaans anymore. I just sound like I'm from wherever I am.
I was surprised to hear. Well, you know, our famous Zulu greeting, which I love, is Sawubona. And you'll appreciate this, Dr. Jerome, because it literally translates to I see you. 100%. And I think that's part of your gift is how you see people.
Thank you.
So here we are in a period of life where people have so much anxiety about the external world, wars in Ukraine, war in the Middle East, war in Iran, the political divisiveness. I really wanted people to leave our conversation today with some tips and tools from you around managing this inner world of anxiety. And I know that's a very big question, so I'm going to let you take it from here.
No, and it's always, I have a lot of phrases that we use in the clinic. And one of them is life is complex. It doesn't have to be complicated. And the reality is a microwave is complex. I don't know how to build one, but I know how to use one. And the reality is when we're talking about things like anxiety, it is complex. But the way that the brain works, one of the easiest ways to know is that your brain does not know the difference between perception and reality until you tell it otherwise. It can't tell the difference between a bear and a deadline. So if you're running late for a flight, your body will physically respond like someone has pulled a gun on you. So when we watch the news, or we scroll our Instagram feeds, or we try to figure out how to curate our TikTok reels, at the end of the day, our brain is asking, am I safe? And if there's one thing that I could communicate to everybody and then the connection ends, as one of the greatest questions we can ask ourselves is, am I uncomfortable or am I unsafe? Because until you determine—
so let's pause for a moment. To question, am I uncomfortable or am I unsafe?
That's it.
Am I uncomfortable? And to look at that, even in you dealing with conflict, you're dealing with real threats versus perceived threats.
That's it. That's it. Because your brain is designed. It's another thing that we have culturally that's really difficult, especially in the clinical world, that I do both executive coaching and clinical work for clients and patients. And one of the things that's really difficult is for people to be able to articulate the fullness of what they're going through, but also realize that there's not an active threat in the room in the moment, right? To be able to go, no, I need to be able to name what's uncomfortable, but no one's taught me that it is normal. It is normal for my body to presume I am in danger first because survival is the name of the game. Also, one of the other things that's normal in the world is we tend to pathologize things very, very quickly, that we go to the worst case scenario. But at the end of the day, 100% of what your body is doing is supportive. Your body's trying to help you. It might not be sustainable, but it's supportive. So being able to ask, oh man, am I uncomfortable or am I unsafe? Oh no, I'm legitimately uncomfortable, but my life is not being threatened in this moment, because if I look at the TikTok reel and I see the threat of what's happening in a war zone, and then all of a sudden the very next thing in my Instagram feed is an offer for a shower head or a perfume, I'm going to have a massive mismatch with whether or not I'm safe or not, and whether or not I'm comfortable. And being able to name that helps us to get back in the driver's seat.
So this is so helpful. I just did a program earlier this week in Chicago for a big restaurant group, and we were talking about conflicts in the kitchen. And think about where that would help if you're listening right now and you are in a high stress, high stakes environment, and you are prone to conflict, and you are prone to screaming and shouting at people or reacting. How does that impact your ability to control your behavior?
Absolutely, because we use in the clinic what's called a pain spectrum. It's very simple. You go from hard to hurt to harm to injured to trauma. So long story short, you go from hard to trauma, and there's a lot of pieces in between. That just like any other regular workout, if I'm going to do a good workout, I'm going to break a sweat and I'm going to end up sore. And so much nowadays, one of the biggest disconnects that we have, whether it's parenting or it's partnership or it's spousal relationships or it's workplace environments, everybody doesn't really know exactly how to manage what hurts and how much they're hurting, even physically, mentally, emotionally, relationally, spiritually. It doesn't matter what the container is. The idea of how we manage our pain is very different than it was a generation or two or three ago. So one of the most helpful things to do is say, hey, this is hard and it even hurts. Let's make sure we don't leave hurt, because it's going to be uncomfortable and we may be sore, but that's a normal workout. And let's do the work, but let's make sure as we do the work that we don't hurt each other, because it's got to hurt a little bit for us to grow, but not so much that we end up injured or traumatized.
So think about our society where there's so much social media and so much comparison. You know, the famous quote, comparison is the thief of joy. And we have a whole society that never feels enough, never feels good looking enough, successful enough. I mean, I'm sure that in your clinic, you're seeing people who could be so much more fulfilled and happier, but they never feel it's enough.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really because, we're running old protocols. Whenever anybody, for instance, I had a client in today who the knee-jerk reaction for them when they do something is to say, I'm sorry. And it's so old for them to preemptively apologize for something that's not their fault. I can't accept their sorry. I can accept their apology, but they don't have anything to apologize for. But it's so knee-jerk to think there's a value attribution, or I'm not worthy, or I'm broken, or something's wrong with me, that one of the common phrases that we use is, that's old. I'm not going to reinforce that for you. It comes from somewhere, but I'm not going to reinforce it for you. Let's see if we can find it, try to understand it. But at minimum, is it necessary in this moment? Because you're just on autopilot. Let's not run an old protocol for a new space. It's old.
Okay, so let's take that back. So are you saying to an individual who feels that? So let's say you are somebody who keeps reliving old trauma.
Yeah.
You keep going through that. And you're talking about working on yourself, not others.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
You keep playing that same story, that same hurt. So your technique around releasing that is to...
Yeah. It's the same, exactly, because what you can do in that situation, again, we want to move away from stigmatizing and pathologizing everything that's happening, because 100% of what we're doing is a survival strategy first. It's our body trying to help us first. We don't get mad at the kid who doesn't know how to make an omelet. They're going to break a few eggs. The body's trying to figure it out, right? A little bit of compassion to ourselves. So the phrase that you can use in that is, I am going to re-experience it before I remember it. Which means, am I re-experiencing it or am I remembering it? So when you have that argument and then the next 3 days you tell a friend about the argument and you feel yourself getting upset and heated and your blood pressure is growing up, is going up, not growing up. You go, oh, it feels like I'm in it again. That's because Dr. J was telling me I will re-experience it until I realize I am remembering it. And you take a moment to go, it's not happening right now, but it has happened. It is relevant, but it's not in this space. The shorthand phrase is no bears. No bears. There's not a bear in the room right now. no bears, because you can't tell the difference between a bear and a deadline. So until you recognize, oh, this is a memory, not a moment, right? I'm not re-experiencing it. I am going to legitimately react appropriately, understandably, as if there's a threat in the room, but it's not sustainable. So we have to be able to go, I'm remembering something, I'm not re-experiencing it. I'm remembering it, I'm not in it in this moment. It just feels so uncomfortable. I'm not unsafe, I'm just uncomfortable.
That is the nugget. That is the nugget. Dr. J, one of the things you speak about, and we won't have time to go into too much detail, is the Enneagram. And the Enneagram is really it's something that's not new, but it seems to have resurfaced. Won't you explain what Enneagram is, how you use it in your practice? And I promise, if people are interested, we will do a full conversation just on Enneagram.
Yeah, and I would love anybody who hears the word Enneagram and either is confused by it or knows it and is skeptical of it. I want you to suspend your belief for a second or suspend your disbelief for a second. Give me 20 to 30 seconds. So the Enneagram is another personality inventory that's called Ennea because it's 9 types or a drawing of 9 things. But the way that I use it, instead of using it as a personality type or an inventory like Myers-Briggs Strength Disc Finder, I do what's called a whole identity profile. You're not a personality type, you're a whole identity, you're a whole person. And the way we explain it to everyone is that you have pilots, co-pilots, flight attendants, and passengers. Everybody's on board and everybody's got baggage. But in most of the tests that we take that help us to understand ourselves better, and the reason a lot of people really get attracted to the Enneagram and then unfortunately sometimes over-identify with type is it's very unique in being able to help you understand why you do what you do. It's the motivation behind your decision-making and the way you show up. So it's very gifted at helping you excavate, okay, well, why do I show up that way? But it tends to talk about your CEO or your pilot. Your primary type is your leader, but you need to know, like any other organization, if I'm going to lead well, I have to know everybody that works for me and what their roles and responsibilities are. So the single thing that I would challenge anybody with who already knows the Enneagram or who has never heard about it is take the test. I specifically recommend the Enneagram Institute's test, the READY and the IBQ. But when you take it, not only ask what is my highest number and why, but what is my lowest number and why, and everything in between matters.
And the idea of using some kind of personality, and I love that you're saying it's not to pigeonhole people, it's not to label them, it's really for a deep understanding of yourself.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And understanding and what your limitations are and how to, I love the word you used in one of your videos. You said it's not putting yourself in a box, it's rather getting out of the box.
Absolutely. And the box has been built for good reasons. You know, the strategies that we have make sense if they've kept us alive up to this point. But I don't want to run a strategy as a 42-year-old business owner, dad, and spouse that I built when I was 8. You know, I was run over by a car when I was 8, right after we immigrated to the States. And my dad, being the solid Rhodesian Bush War survivor that he was, decided to refuse the ambulance because he wasn't sure what happened to our visa if we go to the hospital. He puts me on the hood of a rusted out F-100 and says, I've seen people die, you're going to be fine. And then I'm the only person that I know that was run over by a car and subsequently spanked by my dad for being run over by that car. You know, so I laugh about it now, but the reality is,
that's a lot to unpack.
It's a lot, but I say that because if I know that my relationship with pain and my strategies for how I tell people I'm hurting were built in that moment in some ways and reinforced throughout a lifetime, then what the Enneagram helps us to do, especially through our brain-based model, because I overlay the neuroscience and the functional neuroanatomy, basically how our brain operates and works and how we can leverage that. What we end up being able to do is go, oh, these are really, 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 really understandable strategies that were built over a lifetime. Are they still relevant for me now? And the skill that I built, because trauma builds skills. Trauma builds skills. The skills that I have now, how can I leverage them rather than being led by fear? And those strategies are really helpful once we can understand how they're all involved.
So that's another thing you do offer. Now, every single person who comes to your clinic, do you recommend they do Enneagram? Is that something you do as a prerequisite?
Yeah, we actually have it as an intake diagnostic because I've been using this model for about 17 years now, as crazy as it sounds. It's showing all the gray in my beard at this point. But what we do is a clinical intake diagnostic is I can overlay someone's entire clinical history, mental, emotional, physical, relational, and if they accept it and ask for it, spiritual health history directly over the Enneagram and then correlate it with functional neurology. That becomes practical application. So the really cool thing is if you know how to read the Enneagram through a holistic perspective, not a singular pigeonhole kind of compartmentalized perspective. If you look at it holistically, just like people experience in healthcare, most specialists will not have a conversation with you about 2 diagnoses, but you're a whole person experiencing all of those things.
Right.
Bless you. The
Thank
gift,
you.
you're welcome. The gift is that when somebody comes in with that information, I can accelerate helping them understand what it means and what to do with it. So it's really cool.
So please, if the word Enneagram, I'll spell it. It's ENNEAGRAM. It's a 9-figured illustration, really model. That's what it is. Please look it up. Then I'm going to ask you, but we'll do a whole session just on Enneagram if you have time in the next while. And then I loved the neurotheology of connection, something else you speak about that fascinated me.
Yeah, it's I joke around with everybody. I'm a recovering charismatic Pentecostal kid. When we moved to the States, we had a variety of very dynamic and colorful experiences and very performance-based spaces, let's say. So I, as a patient and a person, have a lot of experience with folks who are trying to navigate a lot of spaces.
I can see a Netflix series here. Like, what's his name? Alexandra McCall Smith, who's written all those books. I think that's the name correct. I'm not quite sure, but Dr. Jerome, we are looking forward to
the series of
stories from Dr. J.
My version of Lemony Snicket, right?
Right.
You redeem those series of unfortunate events. But with the neurotheology of connection, I tell everybody, regardless of your background in faith or the lack thereof or the excessive or engaged part of that, whatever that is, I've never met anybody so far who doesn't believe that they have a soul. When that outlier occurs, I'd love to have a conversation with them too. But the reality is the way that we process relational interaction and the way that we find larger meaning and purpose in the world, the spirituality of what it means, it's metaphorically as an example to tell you quickly, think of your head, your mind, body, and soul, your head, heart, and gut in the Enneagram, physical, mental, and emotional. How they relate to each other is the global experience. It's like 3 continents on a planet, but the space that planet sits in is spirit. So when everybody's like, well, how does my brain, how is it affected by spirituality or vice versa? We can have a wildly integrated experience, and we are going to have to interact with the world at large around us. And that changes the way that we feel. When I see someone experiencing trauma on another side of the planet, that affects me at a soul deep level. So being able to understand that my particular wiring and my neurology is affected by what I see as purpose, or when I'm trying to make meaning of anything, especially pain, being able to connect the dots between brain science and spirituality, which is really, to be fair, is Andrew Newberg's field. He created the field of neurotheology. I just love it. But for anyone who wants to read more about it, read Andrew Newberg's work. It's such a gift to be able to become a healthier version of ourselves and then go, okay, but how does that apply to the world at large?
So in some of your talks, you give a very practical breathing exercise, because I'm hoping that you've been inspired by Dr. J. I am, and I have been. I've been watching numerous videos. Please look him up. It's Dr. Jerome, Jerome.com. And I just love the way you present ideas and the way you package them, because at the end of the day, it's almost a finite amount of universal truths. Shakespeare said, there's nothing good nor bad, but thinking makes it so, right? What are we thinking? I love the concept of, am I uncomfortable? Am I unsafe? So if you can, as we end today's conversation, and I'm promising you more, is just a breathing technique if you find yourself not being able to distinguish between discomfort and danger.
Absolutely. Well, remember, the cool thing with the perspective is if there's no bears, whatever you would not do if a bear was standing in front of you, if you do that on purpose, it will signal to your body that you can't be in danger, or else you wouldn't be able to do it. So the phrase that we always joke around with everybody is no bears, just bubbles. And you can blow the bubbles out of the wand if you want to. But what I mean is, when you're a dad of 3 young kids, you blow bubbles like raspberries. So you actually take a deep breath in. It takes work. You lick your lips and you blow bubbles. That's it. No bears, just bubbles. Because here's the evidence. Our brain processes awkwardness and embarrassment in the exact same place as physical pain. So if you think to yourself, I'm going to put my hand on my chest, I'm going to check in with my body, and I'm going to go, I'll take a large latte with vanilla. You're not going to do it at the coffee stand when you're ordering your drink unless you know that you're not unsafe to do that. So anytime that you're feeling any level of anxiety or stress, think to yourself, am I willing to blow bubbles right now? Am I willing to check in with my body, check in with my face? Because if I cannot control my hands, my face, or my breathing, I am not in the driver's seat. So the simple act of going lets you know that you clearly cannot be in danger. Because I promise you, if you've done your work and you are actively in danger and you choose to do that, you will at least move through that danger grounded and with some sense of control.
Dr. Jerome Lubbe, thank you. Ja bonga, sia bonga, baya danki, merci. Just thank you for a wonderful, wonderful conversation. Dr. Jerome Lubbe's website is just drjerome.com. He is available to do executive coaching and Enneagram, and people who have experienced trauma or who are finding day-to-day life more complicated than it needs to be. So as we navigate our circle of concern, I say part of becoming proactive influencers is exactly what you've spoken about versus being a reactive responder. So Dr. J, what a pleasure and delight. And I'm Nadia Bilchik, and I look